The desert planet was silent, covered in endless red dust. The sun above was weak, sending pale light through a sky filled with thin smoke. For hours, Captain Daniel Ross walked across the wasteland, his boots sinking into the soft ground. He had been searching for metal, fuel, or anything valuable that could help his ship survive the long journey home. But instead, he found something that made his heart freeze. Half buried under the sand lay a broken pod. Its surface was cracked, the once smooth silver metal now bent and scorched. Steam rose faintly from its edges as if it had only recently fallen from the sky. Daniel stopped and stared. It looked alien, not human design, not from Earth or any colony he knew. For a moment fear held him still. Should he report this to command? Should he leave it untouched? But his curiosity was stronger than his fear. He stepped closer, brushing sand away with his gloved hands. The pod gave a low hum, like a dying machine gasping for air. His scanner beeped. It showed faint life signs. Inside, Daniel frowned, his pulse quickening. Life inside an alien pod, that meant one thing. First contact, and he was alone with no backup, no weapon strong enough to face the unknown. He reached for the hatch. It was heavy, locked tight, covered with strange markings that glowed faintly under his touch. Symbols he had never seen before, glowing blue for a second and then fading. The sound of air escaping hissed as he forced the cover loose. It opened slowly, metal grinding like an old coffin being unsealed. Then he heard it, a voice, weak and trembling. "I can't breathe." Daniel froze. It was not just a sound, it was words, clear words in his own language. The voice was soft, feminine, filled with pain. His blood turned cold. Inside the pod lay a figure, not human, yet not completely alien either. She had pale, skin that shimmered faintly in the dim light. Her hair was silver white, falling across her shoulders like threads of light. Her chest rose and fell in broken gasps, each breath a battle, and her eyes, when they opened, were large and filled with fear. But they were eyes that looked far too human. Daniel's mind raced. How could she speak his language? How did she know the words "I can't breathe"? He leaned closer, trying to help. Her thin fingers moved, reaching toward him weakly. He could feel her trembling, the desperation in her touch. She was alive, but only just. He looked around the pod, searching for controls. Strange wires hung, loose, sparks jumped from broken panels. There was a shattered tank inside, perhaps filled with oxygen once, now leaking dry. She needed air. He quickly pulled a small emergency mask from his pack and placed it gently over her face. The hiss of oxygen filled the silence. Her chest rose deeper, her eyes blinking slowly as life returned. For a long moment, they just stared at each other. A human explorer and a dying alien woman, locked in a moment of fear and wonder. Daniel felt his heart pound in his chest. This was no ordinary discovery. This was history. Yet he could not escape the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Her lips moved again. "I can't breathe," she whispered once more, her voice shaking. Daniel frowned. The mask was working, the oxygen should be enough, then why was she still gasping? He realized it was not just air she needed, something else was missing, something he did not understand. Her glowing skin flickered weakly, like light fading inside her body. Her eyes rolled as she tried to speak again, but no words came. Daniel felt panic rising. If she died now, the secret of who she was, why she was here, would die with her. He leaned closer, trying to listen, trying to understand. And then, for just a second, he felt something strange in his mind. A whisper, a thought, not his own. Images flashed before his eyes, stars exploding, fire raining down, shadows of war, and her face crying, reaching, begging. It was not just her voice. It was her mind. Calling to him, Daniel stumbled back, his breath sharp. This was not possible, yet it was real. She had touched his thoughts, shown him something he could not explain. Her eyes opened again, locking onto his with desperate intensity. Her lips trembled as she whispered once more, "Help, me." The sound pierced his chest. He wanted to turn away, to run, but he could not. Her cry was too human, too close to the pain he understood. Against every rule, against every warning. He made his choice. He would not leave her, even if it cost him everything. As he lifted her from the broken pod, the desert wind howled around him. The sky darkened, clouds of dust rising. He felt the weight of something larger than himself pressing down. This was no accident, no random crash. She had fallen here for a reason, and now, with her in his arms, Daniel Ross was part of it. The mystery had only begun. Daniel carried the alien woman back to his ship, his arms shaking not from weight but from fear of what he had just done. Every step felt heavy, as if the planet itself wanted to stop him. The desert wind screamed in his ears, and the broken pod seemed to watch him from the sand, whispering secrets he could not understand. He did not look back. He knew that if he looked again, he might run away, and he had already chosen not to. Inside his ship, the air was warmer, filled with the faint hum of life support systems. He laid her gently on a medical bed, her silver hair spreading like a halo across the white sheets. Her skin glowed faintly, but the light flickered like a candle. Fighting the wind, she was breathing, but it was still weak, shallow, uncertain. Daniel leaned close, checking the oxygen flow, adjusting the mask. He had saved lives before, human lives, soldiers in war, crew members in danger. But this felt different. This was not a man or a woman from Earth. This was something new, and yet when he looked into her eyes, he saw something painfully familiar. Fear, pain, and hope. She tried to speak, her lips moving but no sound came. Only a trembling breath. Daniel frowned and shook his head. "Don't try to talk, you're safe now," he said softly. He was not sure if she understood him, but her eyes seemed to follow every word. Then she raised her hand weakly and touched his wrist. It was a small touch, but it made his chest tighten. Her skin was cool, almost like stone, but alive. She held on for a moment, then let go, as if the effort was too much. Hours passed. Daniel stayed by her side, watching the rise and fall of her chest. Sometimes her glowing marks pulsed faintly. Sometimes they went dark. He wondered if they were wounds or symbols, tattoos or something more. His scanner read strange signals from them, a mix of energy and biology. Nothing in the database matched. She was unlike anything he had seen. In the silence of the ship, Daniel began to feel uneasy. Why was he doing this? Why was he risking everything for her? If Command found out, they would brand him a traitor. If other humans discovered her, they might lock her away, dissect her, or worse. But every time he thought of leaving her, the memory of her voice returned. "I can't breathe." Those words, so simple, cut deeper than any weapon she had chosen him to cry out to, him alone, and he could not walk away from that. Later, as he checked the monitors, he noticed movement. Her eyes were open again, watching him. For the first time, she tried to sit up, but her body trembled, and Daniel quickly held her steady. "No, you're too weak," he said firmly. Her lips moved again, but instead of sound, she pressed her palm flat against the glass screen beside her. Lines of light spread from her skin onto the surface, glowing like rivers. Symbols appeared, shifting and changing until they formed a star. Then another. Then another. A map. Daniel realized she was showing him something. The stars glowed in shapes he did not recognize. One burned brighter than the rest, then cracked into shards of light. She looked at him, her eyes wide, her hand trembling. Daniel felt the meaning even without words. Destruction, loss. Something terrible had happened. Her people were running, hiding, fleeing from something too powerful to face. He swallowed, hard, staring at the glowing star map until it faded. "Are they chasing you?" he whispered. Her lips parted, and though no sound came, the answer was clear in her eyes. Yes. Silence filled the room again, but it was no longer empty. It was heavy, filled with unspoken truths. Daniel leaned back in his chair, rubbing his face with tired hands. If they were hunting her, they would come here, and if they came, they would find him too. The thought made his stomach twist. He should have been afraid, but instead, he felt something else. A strange bond forming between them, a bond he could not explain. As the hours stretched into night, Daniel dozed off in the chair beside her bed. His dreams were not his own. He saw flashes of her memories, cities under alien skies, towers of light, children running in fields of silver grass. Then the darkness came, fire raining from above, screams, destruction, shadows falling. He woke with a sharp breath, sweat dripping down his forehead, and when he looked at her, she was watching him with sad eyes. Had she shown him those visions, or had his mind simply connected to hers? He did not know, but he felt her pain as if it were his own. She raised her hand again, pointing at him weakly. Her glowing marks pulsed faintly. Then she pressed her hand against her chest. It was a gesture so human, so universal that Daniel understood. It meant trust. It meant bond. And as he nodded slowly, he realized something dangerous. This was no longer just survival, no longer just curiosity. This was connection. Fragile, but real. A silent bond between two beings who should never have met. Daniel looked at her one last time before turning off the lights for rest. "All right," he whispered. "You're not alone anymore." Her eyes closed, her breathing steady. But Daniel knew the peace would not last. Somewhere out there, the ones who had broken her world were still searching. And when they came, they would not stop. He had chosen to protect her. Now he had to live with that choice, whatever the cost. The ship drifted in silence between the stars. Daniel sat in the cockpit, his eyes on the endless black. But his thoughts stayed on the woman in the medical bay. He had patched her wounds, kept the oxygen, steady, and watched over her for 2 days. Still, questions ate at his mind like fire. Who was she? Why was she running? And why had her voice, weak and broken, spoken the same language as his own? At night, when the ship's lights dimmed and the hum of the engines grew louder in his ears, Daniel found no sleep. Instead, he dreamed. The dreams were not his, yet they felt real. He saw towers of crystal rising into skies painted with 2 suns. He saw her people, tall, graceful, their skin glowing faintly like hers. They laughed, they sang, they lived in harmony. But then came the fire, ships blotting out the sky, weapons raining destruction, screams filling the air. Every night the same dream returned, growing sharper, more painful, and each time he woke, his heart pounded, sweat ran down his neck. When he checked the medical bay, she was awake, watching him with those deep, sad eyes. It was as if she knew what he had seen. Daniel began to notice strange things in his waking hours too. Sometimes, when he stood near her, he felt whispers in his mind. Not words, but emotions. Fragments of thoughts. Fear, sorrow, and once, hope. It scared him, yet it also bound him closer to her. This was not an enemy, not a monster, but someone broken and reaching out for connection. The more he felt it, the harder it became to think of her as alien. One evening, Daniel brought food to the bay, a small tray of rations and water. She could not eat much, but she took the water with shaking hands. Her lips moved, trying again to form words. The sound was weak, broken, but he understood. "Thank you," she whispered. Daniel froze, the cup halfway in his hand. It was not only "I can't breathe." She was learning, shaping her voice to reach him. The sound stirred something deep inside him, a strange warmth he did not want to admit. He smiled faintly. "You're welcome," he said, and her eyes softened. Later that night, she tried again. She touched the screen beside her bed, her fingers glowing faintly. Symbols appeared, strange lines and circles, a language Daniel could not read, but slowly she shaped them into pictures. A star, then another, then an entire system. Her trembling hand drew a great wave of fire, swallowing the stars. Her eyes filled with tears, her lips moved in silence. Daniel understood without words. Her world had been destroyed. Her people were gone. She was not only a survivor, she was a refugee. The air in the ship grew heavier with the truth. Daniel leaned back, staring at the glowing map until it faded. He rubbed his eyes, whispering, "Who did this to you?" No answer came, only silence. But in that silence, he heard something else. The faint beep of his scanner. He turned sharply, checking the console. A faint signal had been detected, coming from outside. Not natural, not background noise. It was a pulse repeating in a steady rhythm. Someone was searching. Someone had already found their trail. Daniel's stomach twisted. He returned to the bay, staring at her as she lay weakly on the bed. "Is it them?" he asked softly. Her eyes opened, wide with fear. Her glowing marks pulsed quickly, flickering like fire. That was answer enough. Daniel cursed under his breath, pacing across the small room. If he kept her, he was painting a target on himself. If he gave her up, he might live, but he would be betraying her. He looked at her again, fragile and broken, yet filled with silent strength, and he knew he could not hand her over. The days grew darker, filled with tension. Every sound in the ship made Daniel's heart race. Every beep from the console felt like a warning. The woman, though still weak, began to move more, trying to stand, trying to walk. Daniel helped her, steadying her steps. Their hands touched often, and every touch sent a strange warmth through his chest. A bond was forming, silent but strong. He could feel it in her eyes, in the way she watched him, as if searching for something she had lost. Perhaps she saw him as hope. Perhaps she saw him as the last safe place in a universe filled with hunters. One night, as Daniel checked the engines, he felt something stir in his mind again. A vision, sudden and sharp. He was standing on a battlefield under alien skies, fire all around. He saw himself holding her hand, running through chaos. Then he saw shadows. Tall figures in dark armor, eyes burning with hate, chasing, destroying, consuming. He gasped, stumbling back, his tools falling to the ground. The vision ended, leaving him shaking. When he turned, she was there, standing weakly in the doorway. Her eyes were filled with tears, glowing softly in the dim light. She had shown him, not just memories, a warning of what was coming. Daniel walked to her slowly, his breath unsteady. He placed a hand on her shoulder, and she closed her eyes. Leaning into the touch, no words were needed, he understood now. Her past was filled with fire, her present was filled with fear. But her future was now tied to him. And if the hunters were coming, then he would face them, because in the shadows of the dark, a bond had been forged, a bond neither war nor fear could break. The silence of the stars did not last. Daniel sat in the cockpit, staring at the scanner that pulsed with a faint red light. The signal was no longer distant. It was stronger now, closing in. Something out there was searching for them, and it was not human. He tightened his grip on the controls, feeling sweat on his palms. The woman sat behind him, still weak but more awake than before. Her glowing marks flickered in rhythm with the scanner's pulse, as if her body knew what was coming. When the signal grew louder, she whispered a single word. "Hunters." Daniel froze. Her voice was soft, but the fear in it was sharper than any blade. He turned to her. "They're after you, aren't they?" Her eyes widened, filling with sorrow and terror. She nodded slowly, her lips trembling. Daniel felt his chest tighten. He had guessed it before, but hearing her confirm it made his blood run cold. The scanner beeped again, this time with a steady tone. Daniel looked at the screen and saw it. A massive ship sliding out of the shadows of space. It was darker than night, its surface jagged and cruel. Lights pulsed along its hull like red eyes opening one by one. Daniel swallowed hard. His ship was small, a transport with weak defenses. Against a monster like that, he stood no chance. The woman pressed her hand against the glass of the cockpit, her glowing marks flaring bright. Her eyes locked on the enemy ship and her body shook. Daniel could feel her emotions crashing into him like a wave. Fear, anger, despair, and buried, deep inside a small spark of hope. "They will kill us both," she whispered, her voice breaking. Daniel clenched his fists. He looked at her and shook his head. "Not while I'm alive." The enemy ship sent out a signal, a deep hum that rattled the walls of Daniel's vessel. Then, a voice filled the cockpit, harsh and cold. "Return the fugitive to us, human, and you may leave unharmed." The words were in English. Clear and sharp, Daniel's eyes narrowed. They knew his language, they knew how to reach him. This was no random encounter. They had planned for humans. The woman shook her head violently, her hand gripping Daniel's arm. Her glowing marks, dimmed as if the very sound of that voice drained her life. Daniel's mind raced. He could give her up, save himself, and live to see Earth again. Or he could defy them, protect her, and risk death. His heart pounded, his breath came sharp. He thought of her cry in the desert pod. "I can't breathe." He thought of her hand on his wrist, her silent bond, the visions she had shared. And the choice became clear. He would not hand her over, even if it meant his own end. He pressed the comm button, his voice steady but defiant. "She stays with me." The silence that followed was worse than any threat. Then the enemy voice returned, colder than before. "Then you will share her fate." Lights flared on the alien ship, weapons charging. Daniel's ship shook as the first blast tore past, barely missing the hull. Sparks rained from the ceiling. Alarms screamed. The woman fell against him, her eyes wide with terror. Daniel grabbed her hand. "Hold on," he shouted, spinning the controls. The small ship dived through the stars, weaving between blasts of red fire. The enemy ship followed relentless, each strike closer than the last. The woman closed her eyes, her glowing marks flaring brighter than ever before. Her body trembled, and Daniel felt something rush into his mind. Images, feelings, a command. "Down," she whispered weakly. Daniel obeyed without thinking, pulling the ship downward into a thick asteroid field. Rocks spun and crashed around them, shadows swallowing the light. The alien ship followed, but its massive size slowed it. Daniel twisted and turned, scraping the hull against stone but staying ahead. In the chaos, he glanced at her. Her skin was glowing, her eyes closed, her lips moving in silent prayer. She was using something, not just guiding him but pushing energy into the ship itself. The engines hummed louder, faster, stronger. Daniel realized with awe and fear that she was connected to his vessel now. Her very life was feeding the machine. They darted through the asteroids, dodging, surviving. The enemy ship fired again, smashing rock into dust. But it could not reach them fully. For now they were safe. Hidden in the maze of stone, Daniel shut the engines to silent mode, letting the ship drift. The darkness of the field wrapped around them like a cloak. The enemy ship slowed outside, waiting, searching. Daniel's chest heaved, sweat dripping, his hands trembling on the controls. He turned to her, watching her weak body glowing faintly. "You saved us," he whispered. She opened her eyes slowly, tears running down her pale cheeks. Her lips moved, forming a word he almost didn't. "Here, trust." Daniel's heart ached at the sound. He reached out, gripping her hand tightly. "Yes," he whispered. "I trust you." But even as they held on to that fragile bond, Daniel knew the truth. The enemy was not gone, only waiting. They would not stop until they had her. And now, by choosing her, he had painted a target on himself too. The hunters had revealed themselves, and the war for survival had only just begun. The asteroid field shielded them for now. But the silence felt heavy. Daniel sat in the cockpit, his eyes locked on the scanner. The enemy ship circled outside like a predator, patient and cold. It did not leave. It did not lose interest. It was waiting, watching, knowing sooner or later its prey would move. Behind him, the alien woman lay weak on the medical bed, her breathing slow but steady. Her glowing marks had dimmed after the escape, leaving her pale and fragile. Daniel could see the toll it had taken on her. Using her power had drained her life. And yet she had done it without hesitation. She had chosen to save them both. Even if it meant risking herself, Daniel's AI unit flickered to life, its voice calm but sharp. "Captain Ross, this situation is unsustainable," it said. "You cannot outrun that vessel forever. You cannot outgun it either. The logical choice is to surrender the fugitive." Daniel turned sharply, anger flashing in his eyes. "She's not a fugitive. She's a survivor," he growled. The AI's voice remained cold. "Survivor or not, she is a danger. Your duty is to your own life, not hers." Daniel slammed a hand on the console. "My duty is to what's right," he snapped. His voice echoing in the cabin, the woman stirred, her eyes opening weakly at the sound. She looked between Daniel and the AI screen, sensing the conflict. Her hand reached out, trembling, brushing against Daniel's arm. Her touch was light, but it calmed him. Her lips moved, forming a single word: trust. Daniel swallowed hard, his anger softening. He took her hand gently, whispering, "I do." The hours passed slowly, tension filling the ship. Daniel tried to plan, but every path led to danger. If they stayed hidden, their supplies would run out. If they moved, the hunters would strike. He stared at her, wondering what her life had been before this nightmare. Did she have family? Friends? A home that no longer existed? The sadness in her eyes told him she had lost everything, and now she had only him. That night, when the lights dimmed, Daniel drifted into uneasy sleep. The visions returned, sharper than before. He saw her people standing in a council hall of shining crystal, voices raised in anger, fear in their faces. Then he saw humans, soldiers in armor, standing beside them. But something went wrong. A betrayal, a sudden strike, her people falling, screaming. The fire returned, and the hunters descended like shadows. Daniel woke with a start, his chest heaving, his mind spun. Humans had been part of her past, but not as allies. They had betrayed her people once, long ago. He turned to her, his voice rough. "Why did you trust me then?" he asked. She opened her eyes slowly, her lips trembling. For a long moment, she only stared at him. Then she pressed her hand to her chest and whispered, "Because hope." Daniel felt a lump rise in his throat. She had chosen him not because of certainty, but because she had nothing else left. He was her last hope, her final chance to believe in humanity. The next day, the hunters made their move. A deep rumble shook the asteroids as explosions lit the field. The enemy ship was clearing the rocks one by one, breaking their shelter. Daniel gripped the controls, his jaw tight. "They're forcing us out," he muttered. The woman staggered into the cockpit, still weak but standing. Her glowing marks flickered faintly, her eyes locked on the enemy ship. She shook her head slowly, whispering, "No surrender?" Daniel nodded, his heart heavy. "No surrender," he echoed. The AI flickered again, its voice urgent. "Captain, this is reckless if you continue. Both you and this creature will die. End transmission while you still can." Daniel muted the AI with a single press. "I've made my choice," he whispered to himself. The enemy voice returned over the comm, cruel and mocking. "Human, this is your final chance. Give her to us or be destroyed." Daniel's hand tightened on the comm button. His eyes burned with defiance as he replied, "She's not yours to take." Silence followed, then laughter, dark and chilling. "Then you will die with her." The woman's hand touched his shoulder, her eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. She whispered, "Thank you," her voice fragile but full of emotion. Daniel felt his chest ache. He knew the road ahead would be death or something worse, but in that moment, her words made the choice worth it. The ship shook violently as the hunter struck again. Panels sparked, alarms screamed. Daniel's small vessel twisted between the asteroids, but the enemy was closing in. He could feel the weight of doom pressing down. Yet when he looked at her, he found strength. She had trusted him despite betrayal, despite fear, despite knowing what humans had once done. Now it was his turn to carry the weight of that trust, to prove that one human could be different. As the ship plunged deeper into the collapsing field, Daniel whispered to himself. If I die, I'll die protecting her. The woman squeezed his arm weakly, as if hearing his vow. Her eyes shone with silent tears, but also with light. A bond had been sealed in fire and fear, and Daniel knew there was no turning back. The price of trust had been paid, and soon the universe would demand more. The asteroid field exploded in chaos. Rocks shattered into dust as blasts from the hunter ship tore through the darkness. Daniel's vessel shook violently, warning lights flashing across the cockpit. He gripped the controls, his jaw tight, eyes locked on survival. Beside him, the alien woman clung to the console, her glowing marks flickering like dying stars. The hunters were not holding back. They wanted her, and if they had to crush him to get her, they would. Another blast struck the hull, throwing sparks across the cabin. Daniel cursed under his breath. The ship's shields were failing. One more hit and the engines would die. The woman closed her eyes, her chest rising and falling with effort. She whispered something soft, almost like prayer. Then her hands pressed flat against the walls of the ship. Her glowing marks flared bright, light spreading like veins across the metal. Daniel stared in shock as the screens lit with new energy. The shield strengthened, humming with strange power. Her life was flowing into the vessel again, binding her to it. But every second drained her more. Daniel shook his head. Stop, you'll kill yourself. Her eyes opened, filled with tears, but she whispered, no choice. His chest ached, but he pushed forward, guiding the ship through the storm. Asteroids crashed and scattered as he swerved between them. The hunter ship followed, relentless, its red lights cutting through the dust like hungry eyes. Daniel opened the comm, shouting into the dark. Why are you after her? What do you want? For a moment, silence answered him. Then the cold voice returned, sharp and cruel. She carries what belongs to us. Return her or share her destruction. The woman shook her head violently, her voice trembling. No, not theirs. Daniel's. Blood ran cold. Whatever they wanted, it was inside her. Something more than just her life. He turned to her. What is it? What are they after? She pressed her hand to her chest, glowing marks pulsing. Her lips formed the word, key. Daniel's heart pounded. A key, but to what? Her people's survival? A weapon? A secret that could change the galaxy? The hunters would destroy anything in their path to claim it, and she had placed that burden in his hands. The ship shuddered again, another blast rocking the hull. Daniel's scanners screamed warnings, hull integrity dropping, weapons offline. He had little left to fight with, but he refused to surrender. He turned to her, determination burning in his eyes. If they want war, then we'll give them a fight. He launched the last of his countermeasures, scattering mines and flares. Into the field, explosions lit the dark, blinding the hunters for moments at a time. Daniel twisted the ship through the wreckage, every move a gamble. The woman leaned forward, her glowing hands pressed to the controls. Her light merged with the engines, pushing them faster, stronger than ever before. Together, man and alien moved as one. The hunter ship roared behind them. Tearing through stone and flame, it fired again, a beam slicing past. Grazing the side of Daniel's ship, panels exploded, alarms blared. Daniel winced, smoke filling the cabin. But still they flew, refusing to fall. In the chaos, a moment of silence cut through. The woman's voice echoed softly in Daniel's mind, not spoken but felt. Not war, peace. He turned sharply, confusion in his eyes. Peace? They're trying to kill us, he shouted. Her glowing marks pulsed, her eyes locking onto his. No war, she whispered again. Key for peace. Daniel's breath caught. The thing inside her, the reason they hunted her. It was not a weapon of destruction. It was the last hope to end the killing, a chance to stop the cycle of death. The realization hit him like fire. She was not just a survivor, not just a refugee. She was the last vessel of peace between species. If she died, so would that chance. Daniel gritted his teeth. Then I'll protect you no matter what it costs. He dove the ship deeper into the asteroid field racing toward a cluster of massive rocks. The hunters followed, but their size slowed them. Daniel weaved through tight spaces, his heart pounding with every scrape of metal. The woman guided him with whispers, flashes of vision in his mind: left, right, dive, rise. Together they moved like shadows through the storm. At last, Daniel spotted a hollow asteroid, its cavern wide enough to hide. He pushed the ship inside, engines cutting to silence. The hunters swept past, their scanners searching, but for the moment, they did not see. Darkness wrapped around them, quiet and still. Daniel slumped in his chair, his body shaking with exhaustion. Beside him, the woman collapsed against the console, her glowing marks dimming once more. Daniel caught her before she fell, holding her close. Her body was cold, her breath shallow. "You can't keep burning yourself like this," he whispered desperately. Her eyes fluttered open, weak but filled with light. She touched his chest with trembling fingers, her lips forming one word: promise. Daniel nodded, his throat tight. "I promise I'll get you to safety." Outside, the hunters prowled. They had not given up. They never would. But inside the cavern, Daniel felt something shift. It was no longer only about running, no longer only about survival. It was about protecting the key to peace, the fragile bond between two worlds. War was hunting them, but inside his heart, he held a spark of hope. Perhaps peace was still possible, if he could keep her alive long enough to see it. The hollow asteroid was silent. Daniel's ship floated in the dark cavern, hidden from the hunters for the moment. But Daniel knew it would not last. The enemy was patient, and patience was more dangerous than fire. He sat in the cockpit, hands shaking as he checked the failing systems. Shields broken, weapons drained, engines cracked. His ship had nothing left to give. He turned to the medical bay, his eyes falling on the alien woman. She lay weak but breathing, her glowing marks fading like the last embers of a dying fire. Daniel's chest ached at the sight. She had given everything, and soon there would be nothing left. A sudden echo filled the cavern. The hunter ship had found them, its shadow filled. The mouth of the asteroid, red lights burning like eyes in the dark. A voice rang out over the comm, cruel and final. "This is the end, human. Surrender the key, or you will both die." Daniel stood, his jaw tight, his eyes burning with defiance. He glanced at her, frail and trembling, yet her eyes still held light. She shook her head slowly, whispering, "No surrender." Daniel's hand clenched into a fist. "No surrender," he echoed, his voice steady, despite the fear. The hunters fired, a beam slicing through the cavern, rocks shattering around them. Daniel's ship shook violently, panels bursting into flame, alarms screaming. He grabbed the controls, pulling the ship into a desperate climb. The cavern cracked apart as explosions echoed like thunder. The woman clung to the console, her glowing marks flaring one last time. She whispered something soft, words Daniel barely heard. "Cover. Open it." He frowned, his heart racing. "What cover?" he shouted, steering hard as another blast shook the ship. Her hand pressed against her chest, then to the hidden compartment beside her bed. Her eyes pleaded with him. "Open," she whispered again, her voice breaking. Daniel staggered across the cabin, smoke filling the air. He pulled at the panel she had touched, metal groaning as it slid open. Inside was a small chamber, glowing faintly with blue light. At its center lay a crystal-like device, pulsing with energy. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. This was the key, the reason she was hunted, the reason her people had died. He lifted it carefully. The light, spilling across his face, his heart nearly stopped as the truth hit him. The crystal was not alien, not entirely. Its core was etched with markings. Human markings, Earth symbols, numbers, codes he recognized from old military databases. Daniel froze. The key was not just hers, it was part human. The hunters wanted it because it connected two worlds, two species. It was proof of something far greater, that humans and her kind had been linked long before. And now that link lived inside her. Daniel's hands trembled as he turned back to her. Her eyes filled with tears glowing softly, she whispered, "Peace, for both." He understood then. Her people had carried this device not to destroy, but to unite. It was a bridge, a final chance for two species to stand together instead of tearing each other apart. The hunters wanted to erase it, erase her, erase the bond. And he was the last line between survival and extinction. The enemy ship drew closer, its weapons glowing red. Daniel gripped the crystal, his heart pounding. If he handed it over, they would kill her and peace would die. If he kept it, they would kill him, and maybe the galaxy too. He looked at her, fragile and trembling, yet still fighting with her eyes. He had no weapon, no strength left, only trust, and he placed that trust in her. He rushed back, pressing the crystal into her hands. Her glowing marks flared with new life, light surging through her body. The cabin filled with a blinding glow, the ship humming with strange energy. Daniel shielded his eyes, his heart racing. The hunters fired, but the blast dissolved against the light. Her power spread outward, filling the cavern, spilling into space like a wave. The hunter ship faltered, its weapons failing, its lights flickering. The wave of light struck it, not with destruction, but with silence. The red glow faded. The ship shuddered, drifting powerless in the void. Daniel stared in shock, unable to move. She had done it, not with war, but with peace. The key had not been a weapon of death, but of balance. It had ended their power without ending their lives. The woman collapsed into his arms, her glowing marks dimming once more. Her breath shallow, her eyes heavy. Daniel held her tightly, his chest aching. "You did it," he whispered. "You stopped them." Her lips curved faintly, her voice weak, but clear. "No, we did." Tears stung Daniel's eyes. In that moment he realized the truth. He had not just saved her, she had saved him too. She had given him something humanity had almost forgotten: hope. He brushed the silver hair from her face, whispering, "You're safe now." But as her eyes closed and her body went still, his heart stopped. For a terrible second he thought she was gone. The silence of the cabin crushed him, heavier than any battle. "Don't leave me," he whispered desperately. Then faintly her chest rose again, a soft breath escaping her lips. Her eyes opened, glowing dimly. "I can breathe," she whispered. And Daniel's heart, broken a moment before, burned alive with hope. Outside, the hunters drifted powerless, their threat ended. Inside, a bond stronger than war had been forged. A human and an alien woman tied together by trust, by sacrifice, by something greater than survival. Daniel held her close, staring into the endless stars. The war was not over. The galaxy was still broken. But for the first time, peace was possible, and it had begun here with them in the silence of the dark,